Burnley is a market town in Lancashire, United Kingdom, surrounded by the stunning Pennine countryside. It has a rich heritage and plenty to do. The gorgeous landscape provides the perfect backdrop for hikes, cycling, horse riding, and much more. One of the people who called this place home was 33-year-old Katie Kenyon. She was a caring and loving woman, completely devoted to her 2 children, a son and a daughter whom she adored. She loved animals and was close to her family, always making time for other people. It was on the 22nd of April, 2022 that the spelling of one word in a text message would set alarm bells ringing for her family. That day at 12:18 p.m., Katie's daughter received a message from her. "I love you and I'm sorry. Ring your dad. He will be looking after you for a while from today. I need to get help so I can be a better person for you and your brother. Please know I love you and I'm not upset with you. Sorry I couldn't tell you about it. If your dad won't look after you, Andy will always have your back. Remember, ring your dad or Andy." One thing in the text message stood out immediately. The spelling of the word while was missing the H. Katie never spelt it this way. Another message was sent to her son saying, "Hey dude, I love you and I'm sorry. You need to ring your dad. He will be looking after you from today. I need to get help. It's not you. I love you. Will you look after your sister and know, Andy will always have your back. Get your dad to come and get you while I'm gone. If he won't look after you, get him to take you to Andy." Again, the word while was incorrect. Katie's mother Dawn also received a text message from her at 1:42 p.m. It said, "This is the bravest thing I've ever had to do. I need to find some peace and sort my mind out. So with the $6,000 Andy gave me to pay the debt off, I'm being free for a while until I figure all this shit out." Just like the other 2 messages, the word while was missing the letter H. A text message had also been sent to Andrew Burfield, who was Andy in the text messages to her children. It said, "I want you to know I'm truly sorry for everything." Andrew Burfield and Katie Kenyon had an on-off relationship for several years. Dawn, Katie's mother, sent a message to her sister saying, "Katie's walked out on the kids." This was completely out of character for Katie. She was an utterly devoted mother and her family knew she would never go away and leave her children behind. At 5 p.m., Dawn contacted Sarah and Jenny, Katie's sisters. Jenny got in touch with Andrew to see if he knew where she was. He said he had no idea. He told Jenny he was at work that day and she had gone to his house to drop her card and keys through the letterbox before going to a clinic to get treatment for her anxiety. What he was saying didn't add up, so Sarah and her boyfriend Anthony went to Andrew's house. Andrew lived on Todmorden Road and when the pair arrived to talk to him, they saw her white Ford Fiesta parked outside his house, which still had her belongings inside. But Katie was nowhere to be seen. Andrew was not cooperative with Sarah and Anthony and he ended up calling 999. He told the operator. The police soon arrived on scene and Sarah and Anthony spoke with them. They explained that Katie was missing and that all these messages had come through from her phone. A missing persons investigation was immediately launched. The search started at Andrew Burfield's home. He was cooperative with the police and gave them ideas as to where she could be, including this clinic she had allegedly gone to. He showed the officers the message she had sent him and let them look around his home. He got the ladders from his Ford Transit van so they could check the attic and joked, "Do you want to look in my van too?" He had also sent her several voice notes asking her to ring him. And he had also sent a message to Katie's son on Instagram. He said to her son that Katie had decided to go away for a while and asked him to care for her dog, with the dog's name, Indy, being spelt incorrectly. As news of her disappearance began to spread, missing posters were circulated with a description of her. She had last been seen wearing black leggings, flip-flops, a white and blue top, and a blue cardigan. One thing that was deeply concerning was that her phone had been permanently disconnected. 60 specialist officers from 4 police forces were involved and searches were carried out to try and find her. The hunt involved police and fire service officers, dog teams, mounted police, mountain rescue volunteers, and drones. The task before them was huge. The area to search was vast and dense, including a forest that made up nearly 5 square miles. Her sister Sarah wrote on Facebook, "It is now a waiting game. We have done everything we can, searched everywhere and contacted everyone." Then a witness came forward. Police said that a woman who matched Katie's description was seen getting into a silver Ford Transit van, accompanied by a male, and they issued an appeal for anyone who had seen anything similar to come forward. The following day, Saturday the 23rd, Katie's sister Jenny sent Andrew a message. "Andy, I think you know a hell of a lot more than you're letting on. I have read over the messages Katie sent to her kids and she doesn't even spell like that or speak like that, which is what the kids have also said. Katie knows how to spell and mentioned about you having dyslexia, which makes sense with the spelling. You sent them texts. You know where Katie is. The police will trace where she was from the last message sent. Doesn't add up how she would drop her car, her keys, her bank card at yours, but no phone and none of her other bank cards. It's about time you came forward and started telling some truth now. Andrew replied, I know you're worried and upset, but you really can't be throwing accusations at me like that. I had all that last night with Anthony and Sarah. I thought we might work together on this. That's why I gave you my number. I reported her missing last night as I said I would. I gave the police all Katie's things she posted. This is worrying enough without you adding to it. The police searched my house last night, so I think we should leave it down to them now. Jenny replied, Still doesn't make any sense, Andy. Yeah, we'll leave it there and hopefully CCTV will give us answers. And sure enough, the CCTV did start to provide some. Cameras had shown her arriving on Todmorden Road and getting into his van. They were then seen at a McDonald's drive-thru. As the van drove along the A670, a camera showed the pair sitting in the front seat. This was the last confirmed sighting of Katie Kenyon. Mobile phone data showed that her phone had pinged off several towers, heading towards the Forest of Bowland. It also showed the phone traveling back, but a camera showed there was now only one person in the van, Andrew Burfield. That day at 3:45 p.m., the police headed back to Todmorden Road and Burfield showed them the messages on his phone. When the police returned at 5:30 p.m., the SIM card had been removed and put into another phone. He had also lit a fire, which was unusual given that it wasn't that cold. Andrew Burfield was subsequently arrested on suspicion of kidnap. He was taken to Greenbank Police Station and the first of 4 interviews began. But who exactly was Andrew Burfield? He was 50 years old and a father of 2, and worked as a handyman in Burnley, and would work on different properties. Burfield was described as isolated and friendless. He had also had run-ins with the law. He had been jailed in 2001 for attempting to pervert the course of justice. He had also been accused of stealing his boss's car and selling it for £2,700, but was cleared. Throughout their relationship, Katie had looked to him for support and love, but he was manipulative and controlling. He would gaslight her and pretend to help her, telling her she needed to go to therapy to deal with her anxiety. He would often toy with Katie's mental health and tell her that she was mentally unwell. The pair would text back and forth and he would tell her she needed to go to rehab and that he would pay for it. Her anxiety was made worse when in 2021, her Ford Fiesta had been vandalized and her tires slashed, but it wasn't reported to the police. On the 18th of February, she had received a high court writ ordering that she pay £4,000 to Andrew Burfield, money that he said she owed him. The fees continued to escalate and by April she owed £6,000. She was terrified that she would lose her home and that debt collectors would start taking her possessions from her. Burfield told her he would pay it and stop any bailiffs from bothering her. But as the deadline for payment grew closer, the money was yet to materialize. She had messaged her mother Dawn and told her she feared for her life. She said, I'm paranoid to death he's gonna do something. Couldn't sleep all night. Andrew Burfield told her how much he loved her, but would then say she had overreacted about the money he said she owed, and he contacted debt collectors without telling her. In one message he told her to take 2 weeks off work and go to a clinic for mental health treatment, adding, despite Burfield's proclamations that he loved her, he was also secretly seeing another woman. She had told him how sick she was with anxiety and how paranoid and nervous she felt. He told her everything would be fine and sorted out on the 22nd of April. Detective Chief Inspector Al Davies said, While we have arrested someone in connection with our investigation, I'm very much keeping an open mind as to what has happened and I have a team of officers and staff working hard to try and find Katie and return her to her family. When investigators looked into Burfield's phone, they found several pieces of evidence. His iPhone had last been backed up to the iCloud on the 4th of April as he had run out of storage. In his Notes app, a series of drafted messages were found. The messages were him pretending to be Katie and they were addressed to her children, mother and him. They were almost word for word what had been sent on the 22nd of April, but had not been drafted any later than the 4th. When they looked at his movements the day before she had last been seen, another sinister discovery was made. He had gone out to the forest where his phone had been switched off for 90 minutes. He told the officers he had gone there to find a good spot, as he wanted to take Katie for a picnic the next day. The officers discovered that day he had also borrowed a spade from his parents. Then another witness came forward. The homeowner of a property on Hillingdon Road that Burfield had worked at on Saturday, the 23rd, said that Burfield had asked what day the bins would be emptied. This immediately stood out as strange. When the officers went to check, they found plastic bags with blood on them and Katie's bloodied flip-flops. The spade he had borrowed was also there. In an interview with police on the 25th, he said that their reason for going to the forest was because Katie would write down her problems and then burn the paper. So this was what they were going to do. He said he had gone to the forest on the 21st, but because it was late and dark, he couldn't find a good spot. As the days passed with still no sign of or word from Katie, hope began to fade. The police started to conduct their inquiry as a murder investigation. Lancashire police said, "Whilst Katie has not yet been found, we are now working on the basis that she is sadly no longer alive." The police conducted another interview with Andrew Burfield on the 27th of April, and it was then that his story suddenly changed. He said that after going to what he called their place in the forest and setting up their spot, there was an axe on top of the cooler. He said that Katie had bet him he couldn't hit her can of drink with the axe. He said he had thrown the axe at a tree, using both arms to throw it overhead. But at the same time, Katie was starting to sit down. He stated that he threw it down instead of up and shouted at Katie, but it was too late, and she was struck once in the head with the back of the axe. He described being covered in blood as she lay in his arms, saying it was like something out of a film. He said he was unable to get her body into his van, so he decided to dig a 1.5-foot grave and bury her, covering her body with leaves and sticks, adding he didn't want her to be seen or for animals to find her. He tied a bag to a tree to mark the spot where she was buried. He hadn't planned it, he said, and he was going to go back to his house, deal with his children and her children, and then take his own life. He told the officers that he had burned her cards and phone before dumping the ashes in a bin outside a shop. The picnic box was found in his van, and investigators were also able to find a spot of blood inside Andrew Burfield's washing machine. Following this, he was charged with murder. On Friday, the 29th of April, DCI L. Davies told Katie's family the devastating news. Her sister Sarah said, "We simply could not face telling her children. DCI Davies had to do that for us. I cannot describe to anyone what that was like. It had been the longest 7 days of our lives." With this new information, a specialist search team was sent out to find her. They were able to find the bag tied to the tree, but they could not find any sign of a grave or burial site. As they couldn't find her body, police took the rare decision to have Burfield show them himself. He said he would take the officers to her, all of which was captured on a police body cam. He was dressed in a forensic suit and handcuffed as he escorted the officers to the deposition site. He led them 69 meters off the main track and knelt down on the spot. It was just meters from where they had already been digging. It was here that the search for Katie Kenyon came to a devastating end. DCI L. Davies said, "Notwithstanding Burfield has a skill base as a builder, this was a complex grave. Each layer of soil was taken off in order. The topsoil, then the next, and put back in that same order. A large root ran through the grave, and it had not been severed. An archaeologist and a forensic botanist said it was completely implausible to dig that grave within the timescale Burfield was known to have been in the forest with Katie. It was impeccably finished. Despite his story that she had only been hit once with the back of the axe, the post-mortem revealed that Katie had actually been hit 12 times. Her phone has also never been recovered." Katie's funeral service was held in May. Mourners followed the horse-drawn carriage carrying her coffin as her family and loved ones prepared to say goodbye. Her family said that she had been taken away from her children and family far too soon, and that they felt stuck in a heartbreaking nightmare. Her sister Jenny said, "We will love you forever and always, my beautiful big sister." When his trial began at Preston Crown Court on the 14th of November 2022, it was expected to last roughly 3 weeks. He entered a plea of not guilty. The prosecution laid out their case saying, Dr. Jamie Robinson, a home office pathologist who will give evidence next week, estimated there were at least 12 separate strikes to the head. It is the prosecution's case that Andrew Burfield inflicted those blows. The court heard that on the 21st of April, Katie was captured on CCTV kissing and hugging Andrew outside his home. That afternoon, Burfield traveled to his parents' home and took a spade, and that evening his van was seen traveling out towards the forest. He then sent a message to a woman he had been seeing saying that he was proper knackered. As the next day came around, in the morning the pair had messaged back and forth, and Katie had sent Andrew a message saying that she was ready and excited for a new chapter. He told Katie he was going to drive her to a unit for therapy where she could get some help. Phone data was able to show that Burfield had not taken his phone with him that day. At 9:07 a.m., Katie made her last phone call. Between 10:24 and 11:15 that morning, her phone didn't connect with the O2 network. The prosecution argued that it was during this time that Katie was murdered. At 12:34, Burfield sent a message to the other woman he had been seeing, saying that something had come up involving the children and he wouldn't be able to make their date as planned. He then set about covering his tracks by messaging himself, her children, and her mother, pretending to be her. Sarah said, "When the messages were received that afternoon, we knew immediately that something was not right. Katie would never have left her children like that. And there was all sorts going through our heads. We went out looking for her almost straight away, and we sensed then that Burfield was behind it." On the third day of his trial, Andrew Burfield dramatically changed his plea. He pleaded guilty to the murder of Katie Kenyon. Sarah addressed the court with a victim impact statement. "Katie's murder has had an indescribable effect on our family emotionally, and things will never be the same again. I cannot put it into words. Every Christmas, birthday, holiday, and other significant date event will be scarred by Katie's absence and the reasons behind her absence." Andrew Burfield was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 32 years. Mr. Justice Goose told him, "You planned this as early as April 4th when you wrote notes on your phone to her children. You encouraged her to look forward to her new start, and she believed you." He said that what Andrew Burfield had done to Katie was a ferocious and cruel attack, adding that his guilty plea was not due to remorse, but rather because his plan to cover his tracks had failed. Later that month, his sentence was referred to the Attorney General, after a request to review it for being unduly lenient was made. His sentence was upheld, and it was determined it was not unduly lenient. DCI Davies called it one of the most complex investigations he had ever worked on. "This investigation is something that will remain with me forever. Katie was in the prime of her life, and she should still be here now. Her children should be waking up to their mum every morning. Andrew Burfield has completely taken all that away," he said. Katie Kenyon was a loving, devoted mother of two. She had the rest of her life in front of her. Her loss has left a void that will never be filled. Her sister Sarah said, "Not only has Burfield taken Katie from us, he has taken our lives too. Her children have lost their mom in the most horrific way. She was mom, dad, and best friend all in one. Katie was a fantastic mom. Our mom Dawn has had to become a mother to two grieving teenagers. But to do this while grieving the loss of your daughter is so difficult. Katie told us she wanted to stop Burfield from being able to do to other women what he did to her. This cost her her life." At Israel's southernmost point on the Red Sea sits the resort city of Eilat. It is renowned for having warm weather, crystal clear waters, and lovely beaches. Since the streets are rarely completely empty at night and Elliot's crime rate is still relatively low, residents feel safe walking around the city. However, this was not the case in the early 2000s when a mother lost her daughter to this posh town. Following her military service in Ashdod, Israel on June 14, 2003, 21-year-old Margarita Levy moved to Eilat in the southern region of the country. Margarita relocated to the southern city with the intention of working as a waitress and saving enough money to enroll in Hebrew University of Jerusalem and pursue a nursing degree. Only a few days after arriving in Eilat, on June 18th of that year, Margarita's mother, Olga Levy, contacted the Eilat authorities to report that she had not been able to contact her daughter for a few hours and was concerned that something was wrong. On Wednesday, June 18, 2003, Olga reported to the police that she had received a call from Margarita. Aware that Margarita would be living alone, Olga, who was already under a lot of stress from her job, expressed her worries. Margarita reassured her that everything was well and attempted to calm her down. Margarita informed her mother she was heading to the beach to unwind before hanging up. The question of which beach Margarita was heading to was overlooked by Olga, who was preoccupied with work. That was their final exchange of words. When Olga got home from work in the evening, she tried to call Margarita again, but her phone was off. Olga called her daughter repeatedly over the course of the following few hours, but she was unable to get through. Olga's statement prompted the Eilat Police Department to begin looking for Margarita. On June 19, 2003, the following day, in the Yadalum neighborhood of the city, a young woman's body was discovered in a park by a passerby. The woman was face down on her stomach, barely clothed, and her body was in an appalling condition. After learning of the horrifying discovery, the police went to the park to look into the young woman's corpse. A towel was draped over her head, and it was layered with blankets. She had suffered severe injuries. She had a stab wound in her chest in addition to wounds to her head, face, and upper limbs. The body was later identified as Margarita's later that day. To investigate Margarita's murder, the Eilat police formed a special investigation team. However, the investigators initially struggled to determine the true circumstances of the murder. In an effort to gather information that might help solve the murder, the police asked the public for assistance as they were having trouble finding a lead in the case. Things began to improve after 2 weeks, and they eventually had a lead. They asked a man named Sergei Agranov, who was acquainted with Margarita, to come speak with them after being released from military service in Migdal Hammock. Sergei worked as a salesperson in an Isla pizzeria. Although he denied killing Margarita, Sergei admitted to the police that he knew her. Following his testimony, he was taken into custody and questioned under duress. Even after the police searched his house, they found nothing that would have connected Sergei to Margarita's death. The public defender's office represented Sergei in a formal court proceeding concerning his involvement in Margarita's case. The lawyer maintained that although Sergei was acquainted with Margarita, he had a solid alibi that proved he was in his apartment with his roommates during the hours leading up to the murder. In court, the police disputed the assertions made by Sergei's lawyer, claiming that Margarita's body had not been discovered at the murder scene. They suspected that she had been killed somewhere else and that the murderer had taken her body and moved it to the park. Living close to the park, where it would have been easy for someone to dispose of the body if they were staying nearby, was what initially raised suspicions about Sergei. Sergei's detention was extended. The judge reasoned that there was a reasonable doubt linking him to Margarita's murder. Nevertheless, Sergei was freed from custody after just 2 weeks because the investigators were unable to locate any additional evidence to support their charges against him. Now that Sergei was free, there were no leads for the detectives to pursue, and the case finally fell apart and became unsolved. The murder case was never closed, even after a long period of time. Devoted to identifying Margarita's killer, the investigators never gave up. They repeatedly tried to get a DNA profile from the items they discovered at the crime scene next to Margarita's body. A gag order on the murder investigation was imposed by the magistrate's court in Eilat on May 18, 2023, marking a significant turn in the case. This prohibited the individuals handling the case from providing any public information about it. The production of DNA evidence has advanced significantly technologically over the years, and investigators from the Israel Police National Headquarters Forensic Identification Laboratory have kept up with this development by continuously reviewing evidence and findings gathered during unsolved case investigations. Following several months, the forensic team was able to create a DNA profile that pointed them in the direction of a possible suspect after re-examining the evidence in Margarita's case. The man who was identified as the suspect was 51-year-old Jaffa resident Sami Abu al-Assal. Sani Abu was a 31-year-old father of 5 children in 2003. At the time of Margarita's murder, he resided in Eilat and worked in a bar in the city's tourist district. The Eilat District Police maintained the investigation's secrecy despite the finding and the noteworthy development. In order to obtain conclusive evidence of Sani Abu's role in Margarita's murder, the detectives started gathering evidence against him. During a 10-month undercover investigation, the police discovered that Sami Abu had attacked another woman in Eilat in July 2003, approximately a month and a half after Margarita Levy's murder. For this offense, he was apprehended and found guilty. As a result of Sami Abu's 13-year prison sentence for this offense, his DNA was added to the database. Sani Abu's DNA was compared to the sample discovered on Margarita Levy's body using the DNA database, and the investigators discovered that the 2 samples entirely matched. On May 14, 2023, 51-year-old Sani Abu al-Assal was taken into custody after the charges against him were ultimately verified by the evidence. Premeditated murder, aggravated murder, and sodomy were the charges brought against him. After kidnapping Margarita, Sami Abu took her to a remote location and attacked her. He struck Margarita in the face, head, and upper limbs later on, and attempted to strangle her. Sami Abu gave Margarita a chest stab to make sure she was dead. Margarita's body was then covered in blankets, and her head also wrapped in a towel. Sami Abu then fastened electrical cables around the blankets. After tying the cables so that they would force the blankets tighter around her body, he threw her corpse into the middle of a nearby park and ran away. Sergei Agranov, the initial suspect in Margarita's case, was once more placed under arrest for approximately 2 weeks in order for the authorities to investigate any possible relationship between him and Sani Abu al-Assal. Sergei was fully exonerated of any suspicion after it was determined that there was no connection between the two and that Sani Abu committed the heinous act alone. The investigation's latest development was shared with Margarita's family. Margarita's mother, Olga Levy, expressed her thoughts regarding the progress made in her daughter's case. She reported being overcome with emotion upon learning that Margarita's killer had been apprehended. She was now at peace because the monster that killed her daughter was finally going to pay for his crimes. But Olga expressed uncertainty about whether she would want to watch the entire trial. It was a mixed feeling. The sights and sounds of the day Margarita was killed would resurface just by gazing at Sonia Vu. Olga was attempting to move on from her past traumas and was not interested in going through them again. For 20 years, from 2003 to the present, Olga expressed her gratitude to the Eilat Police Department for their commitment and diligence. All she could hope for now was that Sam Abu would receive the proper penalty for his transgressions. Robert Hansen was born in Estreville, Iowa in 1939. He was the son of a Danish immigrant and followed in his father's footsteps as a baker. He was often ridiculed and bullied by his peers. He was very shy, smaller than his fellow classmates, suffered from a stutter, and had severe acne that left him permanently scarred. He was described as being quiet and a loner and had a strange relationship with his domineering father. Since he didn't receive attention he wanted from the girls in school, he grew up hating females and longed for revenge. He had no close friends in school, and when he graduated high school in 1957, he enlisted in the U.S. Army Reserve. He received advanced training as a military police officer at Fort Knox, where he became a skilled marksman. However, he was discharged after only serving 1 year. While enlisted in the Army, he was known to frequent prostitutes in the area, but he told fellow soldiers he found them dissatisfying and yearned to take more control of the situation. He later worked as an assistant drill instructor at a police academy in Pocahontas, Iowa. There, he began a relationship with a younger woman and the two would marry in 1960. On December 7, 1960, he was arrested for burning down the school bus garage of his local high school, revenge for his unpopularity in school. A friend turned him in, but he would serve less than 2 years in prison. While in prison, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder with periodic schizophrenic episodes. The psychiatrist also noted that Hansen had an infantile personality and was obsessed with getting back at people he felt had wronged him. While incarcerated, his wife would file for divorce. Over the next few years, he was jailed several times for petty theft and would marry once again. This time to Darla Hendrickson, and they would have 2 children. Darla was a deeply religious woman who had earned a master's degree in education and tutored children for income. She later said she knew Hansen was up to no good, but she just thought his dirty secret was picking up prostitutes in the middle of the night before going to work. In 1967, the family moved to Anchorage, Alaska, where he would become very well liked by his neighbors and set several local hunting records. Darla and the children would regularly go to Arkansas during the summer each year, leaving Hansen behind. In 1971, he was arrested for abducting and attempting to rape a woman, and then for sexually assaulting a sex worker. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but after only serving 6 months, he was placed on a work release program and released to a halfway house. In 1976, he was caught stealing a chainsaw from an Anchorage Fred Meyer store. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and required to receive psychiatric treatment for his bipolar disorder and was released after only 1 year. In the early 1980s, he reported a burglary on his home, which he had actually staged. With the money he got from the insurance company, he opened up a bakery of his own and established himself as a well-liked family man. In January 1982, he bought himself a Piper Super Club bush plane and would regularly fly it even though he had been denied a license due to his medication. He gained the nickname Butcher Baker for abducting and hunting down women in the wilderness just north of Anchorage through the early 1980s, when the state's largest city was booming because of construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Over time, he would become more selective of his victims, eventually learning that targeting sex workers and exotic dancers were less likely to get him caught because they were less likely to be believed by the authorities if they reported being raped or attacked. Many of the women were transients who came up to Alaska or runaways, and sometimes they were linked to organized crime and their families were unaware of where they were. His MO was to pick up sex workers or exotic dancers in his car and force them at gunpoint to his bush plane where he would fly them to his shack in the Nick River area of the Matanuska Valley. He would then sexually assault them and then release them into the wilderness to hunt and kill them as if they were wild game. In 1983, he offered 17-year-old Cindy Paulson $200 to perform a sexual act, but when she got into the car, he pulled a gun on her and drove her to his home in Anchorage. His wife and children were vacationing in Europe at the time, and he had the house all to himself. while handcuffed to a post in his basement. He raped and tortured her. Afterward, he drove her to the Merrill Field Airport and told her he planned to take her out to his cabin. While Cindy was crouched in the back seat of the car with her wrist cuffed in front of her body, she saw a chance to escape when he was busy loading the airplane. While his back was turned, she crawled out of the back seat, opened the driver's side door, and ran toward the nearby Fifth Avenue. She later told police that she had left her blue sneakers on the passenger side floor of the sedan's back seat as evidence that she had been in the car. Hansen panicked and chased her, but she made it to Fifth Avenue first and managed to flag down a passing truck. The driver of the truck was alarmed by Cindy's appearance, stopped and picked her up, and then drove her to the Mush Inn where she jumped out of the truck and ran inside. She then begged the clerk to call someone for her, which turned out to be her pimp. The truck driver then left and called the police to report the incident. When police officers arrived at the Mush Inn, they were told that the girl had taken a cab to the Big Timber Motel. When officers arrived at that motel, they found Cindy in room 110, still handcuffed and alone. She was then taken to the police station where she described the perpetrator. Cindy made a formal statement to the police and not only identified the make and color of the plane, but also remembered its tail number. However, she was initially not taken seriously by cops because she was a young sex worker and they were considered untrustworthy. Still, the house she described was quickly identified as belonging to Hansen. When questioned by police, Hansen was outraged and insisted she was lying to extort money from him. He also questioned whether it was even possible to rape a prostitute. He claimed he had an alibi and told investigators his wife and children were in Europe and he spent the night playing poker with friends. When questioned, the two men from the alleged poker game substantiated his story. Hansen allowed authorities to search his home, but they didn't find evidence of what the victim described. She also refused to take a polygraph, and this made the police wonder if she fabricated the story. It was a he-said-she-said case because they had no evidence. Citing a lack of evidence, the prosecutor dropped the case. Meanwhile, Alaska state troopers had been investigating several bodies that had been found in and around Anchorage, Seward, and the Matsu Valley area. The first of the bodies was found by construction workers near Eklutna Road and was dubbed Eklutna Annie by investigators, and to this day has never been identified. Later that year, the body of Joanna Messina was found in a gravel pit near Seward, and in 1982, the remains of 23-year-old Sherry Morrow were discovered in a shallow grave near the Nick River. Police had 3 bodies and what looked like one killer. The FBI would create a criminal psychological profile based on the 3 recovered bodies. The FBI profiler described the killer as having low self-esteem, a history of rejection by women, and being an experienced hunter. He also correctly predicted that he would take souvenirs from his victims and would have a stutter. Using this profile, the lead detective investigated possible suspects, and this would eventually lead him to Hansen, who fit the profile and owned a plane. The 2 men who gave Hansen an alibi for the night he attacked Sandy Paulson confessed that they had been lying. Both friends said they were covering for him because they thought he was a legitimate guy and they believed him when he said he thought the dancers were trying to extort him. Police obtained a warrant to search his plane, vehicles, and home. On October 27, 1983, investigators uncovered jewelry belonging to some of the missing women, as well as an array of firearms in a corner hideaway of his attic. Also found was an aeronautical chart with 37 little X marks on it hidden behind Hansen's headboard. Many of these marks matched sites where prior bodies had been found. When confronted with the evidence found in his home, he denied it as long as he could, but he eventually began to blame the women and tried to justify his actions. He would eventually start confessing to each item of evidence as it was presented to him, and admitted to a spree of attacks against Alaskan women starting in 1971. Hansen's earliest victims were young women, usually between 16 and 19, and not prostitutes, unlike the victims who led to his discovery. When an FBI forensic lab matched the shell casings found near the victims to the many 14 found in Hansen's house, he made a plea bargain. At this time, only Sherry Morrow, Joanna Messina, Paula Golding, and Jane Doe of Klutna Annie's remains were found, and he would be charged for each of their murders. He also confessed to the abduction and rape of Cindy Paulson. He then agreed to confess to all of the crimes, give details about each of his victims, and show the burial sites marked on his map in exchange for serving his sentence in a federal prison and avoiding media publicity. Another condition of the plea bargain required him to decipher the markings on his aviation map and help locate his victims' bodies. During questioning, Hansen claimed that starting in 1973, after finishing his rape sentence, he became a serial rapist, picking up prostitutes in Anchorage and taking them to the wilderness in his bush plane where he would rape and torture them. He later claimed that the ones who complied would be returned to Anchorage alive and those who didn't, he would kill. From 1973 to 1983, he abducted and raped at least 30 women with that method and then let them go. However, at least 17 women picked up during the years of 1980 to 1983 were less fortunate. He showed the police 17 of his burial sites, but there were more than 17 marks on his map, suggesting he had more victims than he admitted to, but he refused to help them with the others. It has been theorized that he wouldn't confess to killing them because they were neither prostitutes nor strippers, and he couldn't justify their murders to himself. The victims that were found were exhumed and returned to their families. Hansen was sentenced by jury to 461 years plus life in prison without the possibility of parole, and he would die on August 21, 2014 at the age of 75 from natural causes. In August 2014, one of his young unidentified victims, known as Horseshoe Harriet, was exhumed and a DNA sample was taken and uploaded into Cody's, but no matches were found. In August 2021, her DNA profile was uploaded into a public genetic genealogy database. She became known as Horseshoe Harriet when her remains were found in 1984 by Horseshoe Lake near Anchorage, after getting several close matches of a few potential relatives that currently live in Alaska and Arkansas. A family tree for the victim was constructed. Genealogy research indicated that the victim might be a woman named Robin Pelkey, and then DNA analysis completed by Paribon Nanolabs in September 2021 would confirm this. Robin was 19 years old and living on the streets of Anchorage when she was killed by Hansen in the early 1980s. Robin was born in 1963 in Colorado, and records indicate that she had been living in Anchorage in the early 1980s when Hansen was active. Sadly, she was never reported as missing. The following are 16 more women that are probable murder victims of Hansen. Celia Bath Van Zanten was a 17-year-old who was abducted and killed on December 22, 1971, while walking from her house to a local convenience store. Her body was found by hikers 3 days later on Christmas Day. She was still alive when she was either thrown or fell into a ravine. She apparently tried to climb out, but with her hands tied behind her back, she had no way to pull herself up the cliff, and she repeatedly fell until she froze to death in the frigid December weather. Investigators discovered tire tracks turning lazy circles in the parking lot of the campground, and they believed Beth escaped her attacker, ran down the steep slope, and probably fell into the ravine. Her abductors circled the parking lot, waiting for her to reappear, but when she never did, he finally left. Soon after her murder, 18-year-old Sandra Patterson, the daughter of an Alaska state trooper, came forward to report her abduction on December 19th. Sandra worked as a prostitute to support her heroin addiction. She was working in the parking lot of the Nevada Club in Anchorage when a man pointed a gun at her and told her he would kill her if she didn't do what he wanted. She described her attacker as a slender man in his mid-20s wearing horn-rimmed glasses. The man drove Sandra to a motel on the Canoe Peninsula nearly 100 miles south of Anchorage and raped her. On the drive back to Anchorage, he threatened to kill her if she reported him to the police. Sandra complied with his demands to remain silent until she heard about Beth's murder, and then she knew she had to come forward and tell authorities about her abduction. Police asked Sandra to study a book of photos of non-sex offenders to see if she could pick out the man who had kidnapped and raped her. She immediately identified her attacker as Robert Hansen. Hansen's photo was in the book because he was awaiting trial for the attempted kidnapping of a young Anchorage woman. Hansen was initially charged with kidnapping and raping Sandra Patterson, but prosecutors considered her an unreliable witness, and the charges were eventually dropped. Meanwhile, nothing tied Hansen to the murder and abduction of Beth other than an X on his aviation map. Megan Shaban-Emmerich was also a 17-year-old who was last seen in Seward, Alaska on July 7, 1973. She was a student at the Seward Skills Center, now called the Alaska Vocational Technical Center, and was last seen walking out of a dormitory laundry room. Hansen admitted he was in Seward the day Megan disappeared, but he denied any involvement in her case. Her body has never been found, and it is believed he did not admit to her murder, because she was not a prostitute or exotic dancer, but instead was a college student and he could not justify her murder to himself. Mary Kathleen Teal is a 22-year-old who was last seen on July 5, 1975. Her husband was away working on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and she asked a friend to give her a ride into town and was dropped off at the bakery. Another friend saw her at the waterfall on Lowell Point Road between 1:30 and 2 o'clock p.m. She has never been heard from again. Hansen denied killing her, but he is suspected to have abducted and killed her. Joanna Messina is a 24-year-old who went missing on May 19, 1980. Her decomposed body was found 2 months later in a gravel pit near Canny Lake, just south of Moose Pass. A dental assistant by training, she was broke and alone when Hansen tried to pick her up on the sewer dock. Hansen didn't initially have any nefarious intentions with her, and instead actually wanted to go on a normal date, which she agreed to. However, Joanna couldn't stay in town because she had a cannery job call the following day and needed to get back to her campsite. When she asked Hansen for money, things quickly went south because in his mind, that made her a prostitute. So he killed Joanna, hastily buried her in a gravel pit, and then he killed her dog. Roxanne Eastland is a 24-year-old who went missing on June 28, 1980. She had been staying for the past 2 weeks with her boyfriend at the Budget Motel on Spenard Road in Anchorage, Alaska, and was supposed to meet with an unidentified male on 4th Avenue downtown that day. Hansen confessed to killing her, but her body has never been found. Lisa Futrell is a 41-year-old who was last seen on September 6, 1980. Her body was found in May of 1984, south of Old Nick Bridge after Hansen told authorities where they could find her. Sadly, there is no additional information in her case. Sherry Morrow is a 23-year-old who was an exotic dancer in a seedy area of Anchorage known as 4th Avenue. In the shallow inlet Sandy Point, Australia on December 25, 2017, a snorkeler stumbled upon skeletal remains that held no identity. The local authorities were promptly notified and the case was handed over to the Victorian Institute for Forensic Medicine. As more information emerged, it was revealed that the remains belonged to a male between the ages of 21 and 37, standing at a height of 170 centimeters. Radiocarbon dating placed the time of death between 1666 and 1942, further deepening the mystery. Despite searching DNA databases, no matches were found, leading to the pursuit of forensic genetic genealogy. This breakthrough provided tantalizing clues about the path of the unidentified individual known as Sandy Point John Doe. The question arises, how does one confront a history concealed beneath the waves, especially during the festive season? How did this enigma span across decades? Sandy Point, located in South Gibson, Victoria, near Wilson's Promontory, is a picturesque township that offers a tranquil summer getaway, particularly for families with young children. With its absence of towering buildings and commercial developments, it transports visitors to a more peaceful era, providing an ideal opportunity for rejuvenation, reconnection, and relaxation. In the 2016 census, the population of Sandy Point was approximately 270, but during the holiday season, it swells to thousands. The crime rate is nearly non-existent, making it a safe haven for travelers. On Christmas Day in 2017, a snorkeler made a startling discovery of skeletal remains at Shallow Inlet, Sandy Point, Victoria. Little did they know that this finding would unravel a 95-year-old mystery. The remains, along with any accompanying tissue, clothing, or personal effects, were found on the ocean floor. With no contextual information or clues to the individual's identity, the Victoria Police reported the death to the coroner, leading to the transfer of the remains to the Victorian Institute for Forensic Medicine, also known as VIFM. As the team of experts at VIFM conducted scientific tests, they gained valuable insights into the characteristics of the unknown person. The forensic anthropologist concluded that the skeletal remains belonged to a Caucasian male, estimated to be between the ages of 21 and 37, with a height of approximately 170 centimeters. Through an examination of dental restorations, the forensic odontologist suggested the intriguing possibility of the individual having an overseas background with historical significance. To address multiple unsolved cold cases in Australia, the Victorian Institute for Forensic Medicine initiated a pilot program in collaboration with OFRM, focusing on forensic genetic genealogy. OFRM employs an integrated approach that combines laboratory science, software development, and streamlined processes to enhance the infrastructure of the justice system. Their technology assists law enforcement agencies at various levels, both domestically and internationally, enabling breakthroughs in forensic DNA analysis for previously unresolved cases. Notably, OFRM handles all aspects of casework internally, emphasizing control and efficiency. The forensic evidence was sent to OFRM's laboratory in the Woodlands, Texas, where it was revealed that the remains belonged to Christopher Luke Moore. Christopher, a World War I veteran and farmer from the Gibson region, tragically drowned in Morata Bay in 1928. Following his drowning, a farmer from Sandy Point made a surprising discovery shallow in it, leading to the identification of the mandible as Christopher's through unique dental work. This confirmation was officially recognized during a subsequent coronal inquest on January 24, 1929. In 2017, the additional remains were discovered and were conclusively identified as belonging to Moore, thanks to the verification provided by a grandniece who confirmed his drowning in 1928 and the burial of his mandible by the family. Australian investigators from the VIFM and other police forces, under the guidance of Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick, played a crucial role in working on this case. Following the engagement of Ofram for DNA sequencing from the remains, a genealogical study was carried out, leading to the positive identification of Sandy Point John Doe as Christopher Luke Moore, a 29-year-old local farmer and World War veteran who tragically drowned in 1928. Despite the relentless efforts of his grieving father, Cornelius Ignatius Moore, the body was never found. While visiting Warrata Bay with his parents, Cornelius and Charlotte's Francis wife, Elizabeth, and his daughter, Mary, Mr. Moore disappeared beneath the waves, leaving a lasting void. Remarkably, a fortnight later, on January 15, 1929, a lower jawbone, confirmed through dental records to be Mr. Moore's, washed ashore about 6 kilometers from the drowning site. The remains were laid to rest in the Moore family plot at Mignon. Over time, Cornelius and Charlotte were laid to rest beside their son in 1939 and 1946 respectively, followed by his wife Elizabeth Agnes in 1985. More recently, his daughter was also buried alongside them. Kathy Hogan, Christopher Moore's great-niece, expressed her gratitude for the remarkable work carried out by the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine team in solving the mystery and providing closure for the family during an interview on GIPS and ABC Radio. Initially unaware of the tragic story, Miss Hogan learned from her mother that Christopher had gone missing and the family was left in uncertainty. With the findings of the investigation, they now have a comprehensive understanding of the events. The forensic team's research not only unraveled the mystery, but also provided the family with newspaper articles and the coroner's report from 1929, offering further insights. Miss Hogan described the emotional yet captivating experience of uncovering the full story. After 6 years of investigations, the family can finally lay Mr. Moore to rest. Mr. Moore has been reunited with his family, along with the jawbone that was originally discovered in 1929. Fiona Vai, a member of the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine's team, shared the extensive efforts made to unravel this century-old mystery. She emphasized the initial difficulties faced in identifying the individual based on skeletal remains in 2017. However, by utilizing DNA analysis and odontology, they were able to piece together significant details about Mr. Moore's background, such as his Northern European ancestry, probable blue eyes, dark hair, and distinct dental characteristics. This information played a vital role in narrowing down the historical research and identifying the person who had drowned and was found in the bay. As we conclude this captivating journey into the enigma surrounding Sandy Point John Doe, we leave you with 2 lingering questions. Do you believe that forensic genetic genealogy is a groundbreaking advancement in solving cold cases? And what are your thoughts on the collaborative efforts that led to the rediscovery of Christopher Luke Moore's identity? The day following Thanksgiving, commonly known as Black Friday, holds a prominent position in the United States as one of the busiest shopping days of the year. However, the Black Friday of November 25, 1994 was far from joyful for Luz Musino, a 38-year-old woman, and her 2 teenage daughters, 18-year-old Edith and 17-year-old Gabriella, who went missing on that day. As time passed without any communication from them, a close friend took the initiative to report their disappearance to the Downey Police Department. The circumstances surrounding their vanishing raised numerous questions. How did an entire family go missing at once? And would they ever be found? This mystery takes us to Downey, California, a vibrant and diverse city located in Los Angeles County. Known for its rich history and suburban charm, Downey is most famous for being the birthplace of the Apollo space program and is home to the Columbia Memorial Space Center, a testament to its aerospace heritage. With a population of over 110,000 residents, Downey generally maintains a crime rate significantly lower than the national average, contributing to its reputation as a relatively safe community. Unfortunately, this did not prevent a heinous crime from occurring in 1994. In early December of that year, the Downey Police Department received a distressing call from an undisclosed concerned friend. This woman filed a missing persons report for her friend, 37-year-old Luz Maria Machino, and Luz Maria's teenage daughters, 18-year-old Edith and 17-year-old Gabriella. The trio had last been seen on November 25, 1994, the day after Thanksgiving, and their sudden disappearance raised significant concerns. On December 8, 1994, Detective John Lynch and his team from the Downey Police Department searched Lou's apartment, located on the 11,600 block of Old River School Road in Downey. Although the detectives found the residence empty, there were unsettling clues left behind. Blood splatter was detected inside the residence, causing immediate concern. Investigators found a large brownish red stain on the carpet in one of the bedrooms, covering the entire closet area. Additionally, another red spot was discovered in the second bedroom. To further examine these findings, it sought the assistance of Steve Renteria, a criminalist from the Los Angeles County Crime Lab, to conduct comprehensive tests and investigations. Subsequent tests conducted by Steve Renteria confirmed that both stains were indeed positive for human blood. In an effort to uncover any additional blood evidence that may have gone unnoticed during visual inspection, Renteria proceeded to conduct the luminal test. As expected, he discovered a blood trail originating from the bloodstain found in the second bedroom. Renteria believed it was likely that someone had bled to death, but without conducting further tests to determine the amount of blood required to create the pattern, he couldn't definitively provide the detectives with evidence. Meanwhile, the detectives faced their own challenges. In order to conduct a thorough investigation, they needed to delve into Lou's life. However, Luz and her daughters were undocumented illegal immigrants. Detective Lynch's primary suspect in the case was Luz's common-law husband, 39-year-old Estanislo Prado Gonzalez. As investigators delved deeper into the couple's history, they made a shocking discovery. Gonzalez was the father of Luz's twin children, a son named Carlos and a daughter named Raquel. However, their relationship had been tumultuous, leading to their separation when the twins were about a year old, approximately 3 years prior to their mysterious disappearance. In 1994, when the twins were around 4 years old, the couple decided to live together again. Troublingly, detectives uncovered that the family had moved into the rented apartment shortly before the disappearance. Despite having signed a 1-year lease, Gonzalez was observed by the building manager hastily vacating the apartment with the twins just days before Luz, Edith, and Gabriela disappeared. When questioned about the sudden move, Gonzalez cited ongoing relationship issues as the reason for leaving. He also mentioned that Luz was planning to relocate to Mexico as part of their separation plans, but neither she nor the 2 eldest daughters were anywhere to be found. The Downey detectives suspected foul play and treated the case as potential murder investigation. However, their progress was hindered by the limitations of DNA technology at the time, preventing them from decoding the blood evidence they possessed. Furthermore, the absence of bodies categorized the investigation officially as a missing persons case. Despite expanding their search to neighboring states and even Mexico, no missing persons alerts, bank records, or cell phone records provided any leads. The family doctor in Mexico also confirmed that he had not heard from Luz and Gonzalez for a considerable period. Additional information came to light when investigators contacted the manager of a costume shop where both Luz and Gonzalez had worked. The manager revealed that in 1994, Gonzalez had called to inform them about the family's relocation to Mexico and his intention to collect their paychecks. However, Gonzalez never followed through with this plan after being informed that Luz needed to personally retrieve her paycheck. In an attempt to locate Estanislo Gonzalez, investigators placed a vehicle hold at the Mexican border on a van registered under his name. Despite this measure, Gonzalez failed to appear. Despite their diligent efforts, the investigation eventually reached a dead end due to the lack of substantial evidence. Consequently, this case joined the ranks of many unsolved mysteries, leaving the truth unresolved. In 1999, Sergeant Jim Elsasser of the Downey Police Department decided to re-examine the perplexing Musino disappearance case as he approached retirement. Similar to the previous detectives who had worked on the case, Elsasser held suspicions that Luz, Edith, and Gabriela were no longer alive, with Estanislo Gonzalez playing a significant role in their disappearance. Despite Gonzalez remaining off the radar, the detectives made progress in the case. By 1999, advancements in DNA technology had opened up new possibilities. To gain fresh insights, they analyzed the blood-stained pieces of carpet. Fortunately, this step brought them closer to identifying the individuals to whom the blood belonged. The blood could potentially be linked to either the 2 sisters or the mother and one of the daughters. But additional evidence was still needed for conclusive results. In a desperate attempt to uncover any additional information, Jim Elsasser conducted searches using the names of Musino and her daughters in various databases, but unfortunately, he came up empty-handed. However, a breakthrough occurred when he decided to investigate the vehicle identification number for Gonzalez's van in national records. To his surprise, it was discovered that Gonzalez had recently registered his van in Las Vegas. A call to the Las Vegas police confirmed that he was indeed residing in the city with the twins. Unfortunately, due to other ongoing cases and a lack of available resources, the Downey detectives were unable to pursue an investigation in Las Vegas. This was also because they still lacked direct evidence against Gonzalez, aside from their suspicions. In 2002, the case was revisited, this time by Downey Police Department officers Dwayne Cooper and Gil Toledo. Recognizing the importance of contacting Gonzalez, they reached out to the Las Vegas authorities and requested their assistance. With both agencies now involved, a dedicated team of detectives was assembled to work on the case. Detective Cooper and Toledo from Downey, along with Las Vegas police officers Linda Turner and Paul Woodshea, comprised the investigative team. Their thorough investigation confirmed that Estanislo Gonzalez and the twins were residing in a dilapidated trailer off Boulder Highway in Las Vegas. On February 6, 2003, Tablo traveled to Las Vegas accompanied by Officer Linda Turner and Paul Woodshea to visit the Gonzalez residence. However, the investigators were aware that they couldn't directly question Gonzalez about Luz, Edith, or Gabriella. Doing so might have startled him and potentially led to his escape with the children. Therefore, they needed to carefully strategize their approach to ensure the twins' safety and gather the necessary information. Surprisingly, Gonzalez proved to be very cooperative. The condition of the home was deplorable, with disorganization, filth, rotten food, offices, and exposed wires everywhere. Detective Toldo engaged in conversation with Gonzalez while Turner and Woodshea spoke to the twins. When Detective Gil Toledo inquired about the whereabouts of Gonzalez's children's mother, it caught him off guard. Nevertheless, he provided an explanation, stating that she had left them years ago. To maintain a sense of normalcy and avoid arousing suspicion, the investigators even commended Gonzalez for being a dedicated single father who actively cared for his children. Officers Linda Turner and Paul Woodshea had a different experience during their interview with the twins. They immediately felt a connection with them, as the children appeared sweet and polite despite their living conditions. However, when questioned about their mother, they seemed to have no knowledge or information about her whereabouts, deepening the mystery surrounding her disappearance. Despite their strong desire to take the children into custody immediately, the officers couldn't risk compromising the murder case, so they left without them. Detectives in Las Vegas maintained surveillance on Gonzalez and wiretapped his cell phone. Cooper and Toledo paid a visit to Delia Gonzalez Mora, who resided near Jordan High School in South Los Angeles, in an attempt to gather information about the Musino case. Their hope was that Mora's contact with Gonzalez would shed some light on the situation. However, when questioned, Mora claimed to have no knowledge of Luz and her daughters. Interestingly, just moments after the detectives departed, Mora secretly made a call from a nearby payphone to inform her brother about the investigators' inquiries regarding him and Luz. Unbeknownst to her, the detectives were eavesdropping on the conversation. During the call, Mora offered to drive Gonzalez to Mexico. Concerned that Gonzalez might attempt to flee, the Las Vegas authorities swiftly took action to locate him. They eventually found him at the Boys and Girls Club, where he had gone to pick up his twins. As Gonzalez walked towards his car with his children, the authorities apprehended him. Subsequently, DNA samples were collected from the twins and sent to the Ludic County Crime Lab for analysis. Criminalist Steve Ranteria conducted a comparison between these samples and the bloodstains found at the Musino residence. As a result, Estanislo Gonzalez was promptly taken into custody, and the twins were placed under protective custody before being transitioned into foster care. It is worth mentioning that Gonzalez's reactions to questions about the Musino case were far from pleasant. Faced with his persistent denials during the interrogation, the detectives resorted to a strategic ruse. They falsely informed Gonzalez that they possessed his DNA, hoping to elicit a reaction. Interestingly, Gonzalez's hand gestures during the interrogation, resembling stabbing motions, raised suspicions. At that point in the investigation, no details regarding the murder method had been made public, making Gonzalez's gesture all the more intriguing. It suggested that he possessed knowledge that only someone closely involved in the crime would have. Despite the mounting suspicions, Gonzalez continued to deny any involvement in the murders of Luz and her daughters. However, the detectives were adamant that he would not be allowed to return home. On May 1, 2003, Estanislo Gonzalez, who was 48 years old at the time, was taken into custody under suspicion of committing a triple homicide that had taken place sometime between November 26 and December 4, 1994. Gonzalez's sister Mora was also arrested on suspicion of murder, but the Los Angeles County District Attorney concluded that there was insufficient evidence to press charges against her, resulting in her release from custody. Initially, Estanislao Gonzalez pleaded not guilty to the charges. However, as the trial day drew near, he had a change of heart. Given that this was a capital punishment case, Gonzalez's defense attorney, Jennifer Friedman, initiated discussions with the district attorney's office. Gonzalez expressed his desire to confess to the crimes in order to avoid the death penalty. Friedman later stated that her client entered into the plea agreement out of love for his children. Eventually, a plea deal was reached, and Gonzalez admitted to the 3 murders in a concise 1-page statement. As part of the agreement, he was not required to provide specific details about how he committed the murders, but he was obligated to disclose the locations where the victims were disposed of. Gonzalez revealed that he had discarded the bodies of Luz Maria Musino and her daughters in the Nevada desert after killing them. This confession aligned with the police records of the discovery of 3 unidentified female bodies, referred to as Jane Does, back in 1996. On May 26, 1996, a disturbing find was made in an area near Hollywood Boulevard, just outside Las Vegas, when a group of children walking the dog stumbled upon the naked remains of a woman next to a ditch. Local authorities were immediately notified, and to their horror, they uncovered 2 more bodies. Autopsies conducted on the victims revealed that the oldest female was estimated to be between 35 and 50 years old, while the other 2 women were believed to be between 25 and 35 years of age. Tragically, 2 of the women met their demise through strangulation, while the 3rd victim tragically succumbed to suffocation and also suffered a fractured skull. The investigators faced immense difficulty in uncovering any evidence that could help establish the identities of these victims. It is a heart-wrenching reality that Las Vegas served as a common destination for individuals involved in the sex trade from various parts of the world. Due to the lack of identification, these unfortunate deceased women were often referred to as Hollywood Jane Does, a name that implied their potential involvement in sex work. However, following Gonzalez's confession, dental and bone samples from the Jane Does were meticulously examined, ultimately confirming that the remains belonged to Luz Musino and her daughters, Edith and Gabriela. On June 21, 2004, Estanislao Gonzalez faced sentencing for the heinous crimes he had committed. The court handed down 3 consecutive life sentences to him, ensuring that he would never have the possibility of parole. The case of Brittany Gregory. Brittany Gregory was born on April 1, 1988 in Brick Township and is the youngest of 5 children. Due to her parents' divorce, she had to live with her father but still maintained a close relationship with all of her siblings, especially her older sister Brianna, who was 4 years older than her. Brittany was a model student in school, and her teachers believed that she had the potential to become a scholar. However, her passion and dreams were focused on something completely different. She had an ambition to become a forensic scientist and study evidence at crime scenes. At home, Brittany enjoyed her role as the youngest child in the family. According to her mother, Brittany was spoiled, but she was not vain or arrogant. Brittany was a fan of pop culture, and her idol was none other than the queen of pop, Britney Spears. Her bedroom was decorated with posters of Britney Spears. Aside from music, Brittany enjoys watching cartoons, especially SpongeBob SquarePants. And she can't stop watching TV shows about forensic science, a career she aspires to pursue. Brittany's love for forensic science often brings her closer to her mother. They share a passion for watching TV shows about the subject and often call each other to discuss episodes as they watch them. Brittany, 16, and her 20-year-old sister Brianna live with their father, Joe Dunn, and his girlfriend, Lori Peterson, in a small house near their school. Their house is down the street and near a wooded area. At the time, Brittany was in a 2-year relationship with her 18-year-old boyfriend, John Fitzgerald, a nice guy whose family approved of the relationship, and they were considered the perfect couple. On Sunday, July 11, 2004, Brittany's mother, Deborah, and her sister, Brianna, were visiting her brother and his wife, who had a newborn daughter in the town of South Toms River, 15 miles from their home. That evening, Brittany called her mother on her cell phone at approximately 8:30 p.m. to ask for a ride to John's house. However, Brittany seemed upset. Her mother explained that she was out of town and couldn't drive Brittany, but said that her sister Brianna could be there in about an hour. Brittany agreed to wait for her sister. Approximately 45 minutes after Brittany called, Brianna was free and attempted to call her back. However, her call went unanswered, leading Brianna to assume that Brittany was either asleep or had gone to John's house with someone else. The next morning, when Brianna returned home, she found Brittany was gone, but all of her belongings, including her phone, were still in the house. This seemed unusual, as Brittany rarely left her phone behind and often informed her family of her plans. Brianna contacted Brittany's friends, but none of them knew of her sister's whereabouts. After failing to reach Brittany, Brianna decided to call John. According to John, he last spoke to Brittany on the phone on Sunday morning and they had not seen or spoken to each other since. Lori Peterson, a family friend who lived with them, said she returned home around 10 p.m. Sunday and did not find Brittany there. Brianna reported her sister missing to the police, sensing that something was wrong. Initially, the police did not believe that Brittany had actually disappeared, thinking that she might have run away or been with friends. However, Brianna explained that she had contacted Brittany's friends and boyfriend, none of whom had any information on her whereabouts. Brianna was convinced that her sister Brittany had not run away from home because she was a diligent student and spent most of her time at the library. Brittany also never left the house without notice, and all of her personal belongings, including her phone and money, were still at home. Initially, the police suspected that Brittany had run away, but after speaking with Brianna, they began a thorough investigation. First, they went to Brittany's house to check her room for clues. They confirmed that her purse, containing her phone, ID, and makeup, was still there, but they did not find anything unusual. The police interviewed everyone who lived in the house and eventually ruled out the possibility that Brittany's relatives were involved in her disappearance. Next, they expanded their search to the surrounding area, checking nearby homes, examining property, and interviewing neighbors. They are looking for potential witnesses who may have seen or heard something suspicious. While searching, officers found that Brittany's house was located at the end of the road, near a wooded area. When they spoke to neighbors, they did not see anything suspicious, except for a woman who claimed to have seen Brittany walking down the road, heading toward the wooded area. Numerous police interviews with her family, neighbor, and teachers revealed that no one had anything bad to say about Brittany. Everyone spoke very highly of her. However, her sister, Brianna, mentioned that Brittany and her boyfriend, John, had been arguing frequently recently, including one on the day she went missing. This argument upset Brittany, and she wanted to visit John that evening to make up. In order to better understand John's relationship with Brittany, the police asked him to come to the police station for questioning. At the station, John reported that his last phone conversation with Brittany took place on Sunday morning. At the time, he was at the beach with friends, which upset Brittany because she was not there. The argument resulted in them not speaking to each other since then. John also revealed that he and Brittany had recently broken up. Although she knew he was dating someone else, Brittany had a hard time accepting the breakup. According to John, he had no plans to see Brittany on the night she went missing and did not know she would come to his house. He attributed the breakup to a rumor that Brittany kissed another guy at a party, which he did not witness. However, this rumor prompted him to end their relationship and start dating someone else. John last saw Brittany on July 10th, the day before she disappeared, when she gave him a letter. In the letter, Brittany expressed her desire to make amends. After receiving permission from John, the police examined the letter, which contained Brittany's apology for her actions and her desire to remain friends with John. John appeared genuinely concerned and worried about Brittany's disappearance. Despite initial suspicions, the police had no evidence linking him to her disappearance. After passing a lie detector test, he was cleared as a suspect. However, John did provide the police with one important detail. He revealed that Brittany often took a shortcut through the woods behind her father's house to visit him. This new information adds complexity to the case, leading police to consider the possibility that Brittany attempted to reach John's house a mile away by walking through the woods on the night she disappeared. It was nighttime when Brittany went missing, making it likely that she got lost in the dark woods along the route she had taken. In order to find her, the police launched a search in the woods near her home. However, being in the woods at night is scary and dangerous, and the question of why a young girl would not be afraid to walk through the woods in the dark is puzzling. The search in the woods lasted for 3 days but yielded no results. Just when the investigation seemed to be stalled, the police received information from a woman who claimed to have been in a nearby park the night Brittany went missing. The woman said that she had been with her brother in the quiet, deserted park, with no cars in sight except one, a Chevrolet pickup truck with distinctive wheels that had driven past. The woman had noticed the car and even remembered its license plate number. After verifying the information, the police discovered that the car belonged to Anthony Geiger, 23. To determine if Anthony was involved in Brittany's disappearance, the police began to look into his past. Their findings revealed that Anthony was the ex-boyfriend of Bobby Joe, Brittany's older sister. According to Bobby Joe, They had broken up a month earlier due to Anthony's excessive jealousy, especially his excessive attention to Brittany. She began to suspect that Anthony, 23, had feelings for her younger sister Brittany, which eventually led her to end the relationship with him. Brittany's friends recalled that Anthony often looked at Brittany strangely and tried to flirt with her. During their last meeting at lunch, Anthony tried to flirt with Brittany again. This aroused the police's suspicions, so they brought Anthony in for questioning in connection with Brittany's disappearance. Anthony claimed that he was not in the area on the evening of July 11th until the following day, July 12th, after police had begun searching for Brittany. Although he admitted to being friends with Brittany and seeing her regularly at gatherings, he maintained that they were just friends and denied any attempts to flirt with her. Anthony claimed that he considered Brittany too young for him and only saw her as a friend. According to Anthony, he was at home with his new girlfriend on the evening of July 11th. His girlfriend confirmed his alibi, but because his home was close to Brittany's, police still considered him a suspect. Police returned to examine a letter Brittany had written to John and noticed disturbing signs that she was saying goodbye to her lover, raising concerns that she may have been planning to harm herself after breaking up with her boyfriend. Brittany's parents, however, disagreed with this theory, describing their daughter as intelligent and determined. They believed that Brittany's passion for life and ambitious plans were unlikely to be derailed by a breakup. As the investigation stalled, police turned to the media to gather information from witnesses and enlisted the help of nearby police departments. Brittany's parents also joined the search effort. As they grew increasingly frustrated with waiting and doing nothing, they decided to take action by canvassing the neighborhood, going door to door and asking locals about Brittany. The police returned to the starting point of the investigation, Brittany's home. It was puzzling that she had left her phone behind, especially since she had planned to meet her boyfriend. This led to new questions. Was she kidnapped from her own home? If so, was the perpetrator someone she knew and trusted? During a thorough search of the house, the police found something important in Brittany's room, namely her diary, which contained a handwritten letter. The police considered the contents of the letter to be extremely important because it revealed the truth about Brittany's family relationships, which had been shrouded in secrecy. In the letter, Brittany described her life in detail. She wrote about her friendships, boyfriends, schoolwork, and her difficulties with her family. Specifically, she wrote that she came from a dysfunctional family, that she visited her brother in prison every Sunday, that her mother was a drug addict and abandoned her when she was 9 years old, and that she now lived with her father, with whom she was not very close, and his various girlfriends. Despite acknowledging her own shortcomings and past mistakes, Brittany expressed her determination to break free from the cycle of dysfunctional family life. Her goal was to become a forensic scientist and make a positive impact by helping solve crimes. After reading the letter, the police investigation shifted its focus to Brittany's family, who were not initially considered suspects. Police began investigating each family member and discovered that a male massage parlor, which was actually a front for prostitution, was being operated from their home by Lori Peterson, a friend of Brittany's father. Neighbors knew that Lori did not provide legitimate massages but only intimate services for money, which she openly advertised by handing out business cards in the area. Neighbors also reported that suspicious people often gathered at Brittany's father's home to use illegal drugs. Several men, most of whom Lori did not know, came to use her services. It is possible that one of her clients abducted Brittany from her home. After Brittany went missing, more than 100 police were tasked with identifying everyone who had visited Joe Dunn's home over the past month. A week after Brittany went missing, on July 18th, police made a breakthrough when they arrested a suspect in connection with the murder. However, at the time of the arrest, Brittany's body had not been found, making the news extremely difficult for her family to accept, as they still held out hope that she was still alive. When police released a photo of the suspect, Brittany's mother, Deborah, recognized the man as 38-year-old Jack Fuller, a family friend of 20 years. Jack regularly attended family gatherings and had developed a close relationship with the family over time, to the point where his daughter was engaged to Brittany's brother, who is currently in custody. Her mother Deborah was shocked by the news, finding it hard to believe that Jack could be involved in such a crime. The fact that his children were friends with Brittany made the allegations even harder to accept, and the family continued to hold out hope that Brittany was still alive. Jack had a lengthy criminal history, with numerous incidents and arrests over the years. His crimes included breaking into vehicles, homes, and sheds, as well as using and selling drugs. He was known to be aggressive, once threatening someone with a baseball bat and fighting with police during a scuffle. Jack also had a habit of lying to police about his identity, which he did after being arrested for driving under the influence. Court records show that he was arrested more than a dozen times over a 10-year period and had served time in state prison for theft and violating his parole. Neighbors said they feared Jack and often chose not to report his crimes because of threats. He was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison at his most recent trial but was released about a year before Brittany went missing. Brittany's parents believed Jack might have stolen money or jewelry to buy drugs, but they did not believe he would harm their daughter. However, after Jack was arrested, police revealed how they were able to connect him to Brittany's disappearance. The key piece of evidence began with a phone call to the police station. The caller reported that Jack had confided in him a few days earlier about having back pain after burying a body in sandy soil. According to the caller, Jack was confident that the body's location would not be discovered and even asked for advice on how deep to bury it to avoid being smelled by animals. The police invited the informant to the police station and asked him to wear a wiretap to meet Jack Fuller and talk to him about the crimes, including the murder. The informant agreed and wore a wiretap to the meeting. During the conversation, Jack confessed to the murder, saying that he had buried the victim's body in a remote location that would never be found. However, he did not mention the victim's name. In addition, Jack said that he needed to kill someone else who knew too much. Pointing to his friend Tommy, the police were sure that Tommy knew something important that could help solve the case. Otherwise, Jack would not want to eliminate him. The police took Tommy to the police station for questioning, but he initially refused to cooperate, claiming that he had no information about the case. However, the police knew he was not telling the truth. The police played Tommy a recorded conversation between Jack and another person, in which Jack revealed his desire to harm Tommy because he was likely to reveal information. Realizing that his safety was in danger, Tommy decided to work with the police. He explained that on the night Brittany went missing, he and Jack had been driving around the neighborhood smoking marijuana. They stopped in front of Brittany's house, and Jack decided to go in to talk to Brittany's father about some issues. When he entered, Jack discovered that Brittany was the only person there. 5 minutes after Jack left, he returned to the car with Brittany, who was sitting in the back seat. Tommy said he was confused by her sudden appearance and asked what was going on, but Brittany remained silent, avoiding eye contact. Jack only said that he would drive Tommy home. When they arrived at Tommy's house, Brittany got out of the back seat and moved into the front passenger seat after Tommy got out of the car. Jack then drove away with Brittany. The next day, Jack did not mention the events of the previous day when he met Tommy again. That day, Jack took his car to the car wash, where he washed it thoroughly inside and out. This behavior was unusual for Jack, as he had never done this before. The car wash attendant even joked about washing the car thoroughly, but Jack reacted aggressively, warning the attendant to mind his own business or he would be in danger. Tommy discovered that Brittany was missing and immediately suspected Jack of being involved. He directly asked Jack what happened to her, but Jack's response was aggressive and evasive. Jack claimed to have taken Brittany home, but his attitude was threatening, warning Tommy to ignore it or he would be in trouble. The police found Jack's behavior suspicious and decided to arrest him. Upon arrival, they found Jack holding a can of gasoline, apparently preparing to set the car on fire to destroy potential evidence. During the search, blood was found in the car, and forensics determined that it was Brittany's blood. After the police found out that Jack had visited a car wash after a trip with Brittany, they went there and confiscated the vacuum cleaner he was using. A major discovery was made when criminologists found blood-stained sand inside a vacuum cleaner, and subsequent testing confirmed that the blood was Brittany's. However, despite this incriminating evidence, Jack refused to confess to Brittany's abduction and murder. He also refused to discuss the matter further. The police interviewed all of Jack's acquaintances. Most of them believed that Jack was capable of murder, describing him as a reckless man. Many described him as someone who would do anything. Although Jack did not work anywhere, he always had money. A major revelation came during the investigation. A patrol officer reported seeing Jack's car parked on the side of the road near the woods on the night Brittany disappeared. At the time, police were unaware of Brittany's disappearance and approached Jack, who claimed he was looking for his dog that had run off into the woods. With this information, the search for the body focused on the area where police had seen Jack's car. A comprehensive search effort was launched, involving officers, canine units, helicopters, and volunteers. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, the search was unsuccessful in locating Brittany's body. Police believe Brittany needed a ride to her boyfriend's house that night and asked Jack for help. Jack agreed, but instead of taking her to her destination, he dropped off his friend Tommy and took advantage of the situation to attack and kill Brittany. Police needed to find her body to build a case against Jack. While police were trying to get Jack to confess, a vital witness came forward. A woman who had previously been held hostage by Jack for months contacted police, claiming that she might know where he had hidden Brittany's body. The woman was a former drug addict and Jack had held her hostage for months before she escaped. She had learned of Jack's habits during her captivity and knew his usual haunts. She remembered him showing her a location near power lines, which he claimed would be the perfect place to dump the body without being detected. Initially, police were skeptical of the woman's claims but began questioning her. She provided detailed information about the location, including its location in Lakewood and the condition of the soil. This information caught the attention of police as it matched an earlier tip from an informant who reported that Jack had complained about the difficulty of burying a body in sandy soil. Police conducted a search in the area identified by the woman, about 3 miles from Brittany's residence. The search effort, involving more than 100 people each day, continued for several days despite initially being fruitless. However, a major breakthrough came when experts compared sand found in Jack's vacuum cleaner at the car wash with soil in the search area, confirming a perfect match. The discovery fueled police's determination to continue searching the densely wooded area on the border of Monmouth and Ocean counties. On the morning of Tuesday, July 27, 2004, 15 days after Brittany was reported missing, she was found by 3 New Jersey canine officers who had brought their dogs along on a weekend search to help. Brittany's body was found in a ditch, and a collar with Brittany's name on it was found around her neck. Police knew right away that they had finally found her. The medical examiner confirmed the body's identity as Brittany Gregory through an autopsy. However, due to significant decomposition and multiple injuries, including strangulation and severe head trauma, the medical examiner was unable to determine a sole cause of death. A prosecutor clarified that head trauma was not the primary cause of death. Brittany's body showed no obvious signs of sexual assault, but the medical examiner did not rule out rape. Jack eventually accepted the plea deal after discussing the option with his attorney, a decision that was also supported by Brittany's family, who wanted to avoid a lengthy and grueling trial. Brittany's mother explained that her primary motivation for the deal was not to seek the death penalty for Jack, as she believed that would be too easy an outcome for him. Instead, she wanted Jack to spend the rest of his life in prison, reflecting on his actions and suffering the consequences of his actions. According to Jack, the chain of events that led to the incident began when Brittany asked him to drive her to her boyfriend's house, which Jack agreed to. After dropping off his companion, Tommy, Jack was going to take Brittany to her destination. However, he stopped on the side of the road and started smoking marijuana, which angered Brittany. She screamed and slapped him on the hand. This provoked a violent reaction from Jack, who began punching Brittany. Jack confessed to punching Brittany in the face and head at least twice because she tried to interfere with his marijuana smoking. After the attack, Brittany began gasping for air and making gurgling noises, while Jack continued to get high as blood poured from her nose and mouth. When he finally turned to her, Brittany had stopped breathing. He realized she was dead and decided to dispose of her body. However, Jack's testimony was not credible because the medical examiner found signs of strangulation that Jack did not mention. Additionally, he did not explain why he removed all of Brittany's clothes. The prosecution believed the crime was sexually motivated and the jury indicted Jack on February 9, 2005, for murder. Jack Fuller pleaded guilty on October 18, 2005, to intentionally causing serious injury resulting in death. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison without parole on January 13th. Autumn Leigh McClure, a 16-year-old girl, resided with her grandmother in Ormond Beach, Florida. She attended Mainland High School. On May 10, 2004, Autumn's grandmother contacted the sheriff's office to report her missing after she failed to return home. The last known sighting of Autumn was with her boyfriend. Upon questioning, her boyfriend informed the police that he had dropped her off at the Volusia Mall and hadn't seen her since. A search was initiated, but no trace of Autumn was found. Later on, Autumn's grandmother informed detectives that Autumn had caught her from a different area code and had sent letters postmarked from Melbourne, Florida, stating that she was safe and would return home after turning 18. The case went dormant until 2004 when detectives received information that Autumn had been staying with Brian Donnelly and Jessica Freeman. The detectives visited their residence and were informed that Autumn had stayed with them briefly before leaving. Donnelly and Freeman claimed to be Autumn's co-workers at a Winn-Dixie supermarket. They mentioned that Autumn had a strange relationship with her grandmother, which led them to offer her temporary accommodation in their trailer. However, they had no further knowledge about her whereabouts. Despite the case going cold, The detectives persisted in their efforts. They obtained DNA samples from Autumn's family members and entered them into a national database for missing children. The case remained unsolved until 12 years later, when the detectives reached out to Autumn's boyfriend again. This time he admitted to lying about dropping her off at the Volusian Mall. He confessed that he had actually left her at the Seabreeze Bridge, where she then got into a car with Jessica Freeman. Detectives managed to locate Freeman, who had relocated to Nevada, but she denied any involvement in Autumn's disappearance. A breakthrough occurred when a tipster informed the police that Freeman and Donnelly were connected to Autumn's disappearance. Freeman, who was questioned by the police once again, requested immunity in exchange for providing information about Autumn's disappearance. She disclosed that she worked alongside Autumn and that both she and Donnelly permitted Autumn to reside with them in the trailer. Freeman also revealed that she was involved in a sexual relationship with the couple. According to Freeman, upon returning home one day, she witnessed Donnelly allegedly choking Autumn in the bathroom. Despite her efforts, she was unable to save Autumn, prompting her to leave the trailer where they all resided. When Freeman returned 2 weeks later and inquired about Autumn's whereabouts, Donnelly reportedly threatened her by saying, "Shut up or the same thing will happen to you." Freeman claimed that Donnelly had confessed to cutting up Autumn's body, burying her and scattering her remains in various locations. Although she was unaware of the exact burial site, Freeman informed authorities in late 2023 that she suspected Autumn's body was buried beneath the trailer, as Donnelly had expressed satisfaction over new concrete being laid at the location. Following a ground-penetrating radar investigation, authorities detected areas of varying density beneath the surface. Consequently, they collaborated with the current owner of the trailer to excavate the remains. In February 2024, authorities recovered nearly all of Autumn's remains, which were sent to the medical examiner for identification confirmation. Despite the discovery of her remains, Dudley could not be prosecuted as he passed away in 2022. On July 15, 1996, a woman's body was discovered in Sonoma County, California. Her body was found by a survey crew working in the area of Stony Point Road, north of West Railroad Avenue. She was identified as 32-year-old Michelle Marieville of Union City, California. The autopsy showed she had suffered multiple skull fractures and a broken neck. Items that contained DNA belonging to the suspect was collected from the crime scene and stored to be used later. Detectives conducted an extensive investigation at the time, but unfortunately came up cold. In April of 2021, detectives submitted forensic evidence they had for review at the Serological Research Institute for biological testing. On January 18, 2022, investigators got a hit. A DNA match came back to Jack Alexander Boken. He passed away on December 4, 2021, where he had been in custody at the California Department of Corrections Medical Facility. In Vacaville, California, Boken had been arrested in October of 1997, less than a year after Michelle's life was taken, by San Francisco police on a charge of kidnapping with the intent to commit assault. In 2000, Boken was sentenced to 231 years in the case. Boken's cousin, Laura Lucier, had this to say about him. She described him as a brilliant boy who grew up in a working-class family in the Mission in San Francisco. He had what she called dirty secrets. He was sneaking his father's gun to school at age 7. By the time he was 9, he was stealing bikes, and when he was 10, he started assaulting Laura when she was just 3 years old. Even at the young age, Jack Boken was already so practiced in stealth that the abuse was never suspected. In the years that followed, not even my father, who was a San Francisco police inspector, sensed that anything was wrong, Laura Lucia wrote. Laurel also chronicled a host of other women that Boken abused. She documented in great detail all the harms Boken had caused women, stating that even though he was family, he will never and should never have another chance at freedom. But I find no joy in that, only relief for myself and deep regret that he wasted his life and shattered so many others. Michelle's family had this to say in a statement. Though she has been gone, memories of her beautiful smile, impeccable style, generous spirit, and enthusiasm for life live on forever in the hearts of the many people whose lives she touched. Our dear Michelle was a mom of 3 young girls who were raised in the care of her incredible mother, as well as by her loving sister. Though her struggles made her particularly vulnerable at times, Michelle's strength is what kept her persevering through many adversities to do her best for those she loved. Michelle's tenacious spirit lives on in her daughters, who are all leading happy and healthy lives today and raising their children to remember her as the beautiful grandmother whom we all wish they could have met. Maria Cash, the sole daughter in a family of 4 siblings, was a resident of the Baracas neighborhood in Buenos Aires. She was born on December 5, 1981, and enjoyed a blissful childhood with her parents, Federico and Maria del Carmen, along with her brothers Maximo, Patricio, and Santiago. From a tender age, she grasped the significance of friendship when she crossed paths with a girl named Carolina at the age of 6, forging a bond that would endure a lifetime. Subsequently, during their 3rd year of high school, Maria and her best friend Carolina welcomed another addition to their circle, Mariana, who seamlessly became an inseparable part of their group. Maria's social circle was characterized by its quality rather than quantity. Although she maintained amicable relations with her family, she bore the reputation of a rather solitary individual. Even when surrounded by people, she possessed the unique ability to disconnect and revel in solitude. As she matured and gained more independence, whenever she yearned for solitude, she would simply decide to retreat in a coastal city in Argentina known for its pristine beaches, distinctive architectural beauty, and abundant pine forests. Upon arriving, she routinely switched off her cell phone, leaving her friends and family without news of her for several days. Maria developed her talents as a designer and took charge of selling the clothing she crafted. Additionally, she was involved in the sales and promotion of various products. In contrast to her preference for solitude and moments of introspection, Maria displayed a warm and courteous demeanor towards others. Acquaintances frequently remarked on her perpetual smile and serene countenance, making her a delightful presence to be around. Her lively and energetic nature added to her charm. Carolina and Mariana portrayed her as a free spirit with a deep affinity for nature. They emphasized that she lived a modest existence, but consistently extended invitations to dine with her friends and never forgot to mark their birthdays, even if it meant gifting them with a handmade flower. Nevertheless, Carolina also noted Maria's enigmatic side. At some point during her youth, Maria joined a spiritual group, a religious movement centered on self-realization. This pursuit resonated deeply with her, as it provided a platform for meditation exercises aimed at achieving inner peace. While seemingly incongruous to outsiders, this spiritual practice held profound meaning for her, accentuating her inherently spiritual and tranquil disposition. Maria's involvement in the group, along with the enigmatic inner circle she cultivated within the group, remained shrouded in secrecy from her friends and family. Despite its fundamental role in her life, she limited her disclosures to the fact that she dedicated extensive hours to meditation in pursuit of self-awareness. It was within the realms of this group that Maria crossed paths with Juan Pablo, a teacher, proprietor of a restaurant, and government employee in Jujuy. He resided at the picturesque town located 13 kilometers to the north of San Salvador de Jujuy. Over time, Juan Pablo and Maria's friendship deepened to a point where their closeness sparked speculations among both acquaintances and family members. Mariana and Carolina recalled Maria's glowing remarks about him. In late June 2011, Maria confided in her friends, expressing her desire to journey to Jujuy to promote her products, a decision that raised eyebrows, considering the considerable distance and geographical separation from the capital. Maria meticulously orchestrated her trip to Jujuy, veiling the true purpose from everyone, or at least weaving 3 different narratives. She casually mentioned her intention to rest, to sell some of her handmade garments, and even claimed that a friend had extended a job offer at a bar in Jujuy. During a phone call in the presence of her friends, she cryptically mentioned a job opportunity from a Jujuy-based friend, without divulging further details. She outlined her plans to depart in July and return to Buenos Aires by December. In the days preceding her journey, Maria convened with her friends for a dinner gathering at Mariana's residence. That night, she shared an overwhelming desire to spread the love of God among people. She carried a Bible brimming with highlighted passages marking a newfound religiosity, as per Mariana's recollection. In reference to her voyage to Hugh, Federico Cash, her father, explained that she sought serenity and opted for a destination devoid of the chaos of the capital. She had informed him about a job offer at a friend's bar. On July 4th, Maria commenced her journey and at 7:30 p.m., left her home, packing minimally, indicating her intention to be away for just a few days. Her father, Federico, accompanied her to the bus terminal, where she was set to board a bus destined for San Salvador de Jujuy, scheduled to arrive around 6 p.m. the following day. Little did he know that it would be the last time he saw her alive. Somewhere along the journey, an event occurred that remained shrouded in ambiguity to this day, lacking clarity in its entirety. What is unequivocal is that on July 5th, Maria made an unexpected decision to disembark in Rosario de la Frontera, a town situated in the province of Salta. This deviation from the plan caught everyone by surprise. In subsequent communications with her family and her friend Juan Pablo, she vaguely alluded to her discomfort with certain fellow passengers, citing an unpleasant experience during the bus ride. However, she refrained from disclosing the true nature of the situation. Standing by the roadside, Maria resorted to hitchhiking and ventured southward until she reached Santiago del Estero. None of these detours aligned with her original itinerary. Nevertheless, after reconnecting with her friend, Juan Pablo, and disclosing her financial predicament, she resolved to resume her journey. He generously offered to purchase her a bus ticket online, enabling her to continue her voyage to Uruguay. Juan Pablo's sister answered the call, informing her that he was occupied with work and couldn't personally pick her up. Instead, she suggested taking a taxi with the assurance that they would cover the fare upon her arrival. Subsequently, all communication with Maria ceased. When Juan Pablo returned home, he found her absent. At approximately 4:30 a.m., he sent her numerous messages urging her to either visit her grandmother's house or one of his own restaurants. He provided detailed addresses and insisted on covering the taxi fare, but received neither a response nor her arrival. Around 2 p.m., the young woman was spotted once more, attempting to hitchhike along Route 34. During that afternoon, she conversed with her family, revealing that she had depleted her funds and was feeling unwell, yet she refrained from divulging further details. On the night of July 6th, she was captured on video passing through a toll booth. Notably, she was without her suitcase but carried a backpack. Remarkably, the same backpack seen in the footage was discovered by toll booth employees who chose to retain it and eventually handed it over to the police several days later. According to some accounts of the case, on July 7th, Maria sought medical attention at a hospital in Salta. However, as the medical examination was about to commence, she opted to depart. Witnesses attested to her appearing disoriented and erratic, as if she lacked a clear sense of direction or purpose. Her overall appearance was somewhat disheveled. Nevertheless, she did manage to consult a pulmonologist in downtown San Salvador de Huy. He charged her 100 pesos for the consultation and prescribed medication for a respiratory issue. In contrast to the descriptions provided by those who encountered her at the hospital, the pulmonologist asserted that she exhibited perfect lucidity, cleanliness, and neatness. These conflicting reports presented a perplexing challenge for investigators. On the same day, July 7th, she embarked on a journey to Salta. A truck driver who had previously seen her in Pampa Blanca, Huy, confirmed encountering her while walking along a street in downtown Salta. Another woman also observed her in the vicinity, seemingly in search of a craft store that included a gym on its upper floor. Around 5 p.m., from an internet cafe in that city, Maria sent an email to her brothers requesting their phone numbers. In the email, she expressed her desire to return to Buenos Aires, citing the loss of her belongings. Regrettably, the communication abruptly terminated, instilling concern within her family. Consequently, they promptly made the decision to report her disappearance, filing a formal complaint at a police station in Salta. Fearing the worst, her father and one of her brothers opted to embark on a car journey to Uruguay. Nonetheless, their efforts to locate her proved futile, as she had already moved on from the area. It appears that on July 8th, Maria engaged in an unexpected encounter at the toll booth. She boarded a van driven by a producer and former councilman from the Salta locality. He transported her to the roundabout, where Maria once again solicited a new ride. This time, she succeeded in securing a ride from a truck driver heading to Route 34. Witnesses who encountered her in that vicinity attested to her appearing bewildered and disoriented. She disembarked at a religious pilgrimage site and was spotted in the vicinity of the sanctuary at approximately 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Following this moment, all trace of her vanished. Right from the outset, Maria's family pointed out numerous shortcomings in the investigation. For an initial period of 8 months, the case was categorized as a mere disappearance, with the Salta judicial system overseeing the inquiry. However, in early 2012, Maria's father lodged a report suggesting the possibility of human trafficking. Consequently, the case and its investigation were transferred to the federal prosecutor's office in Salta. The investigation proved to be an intricate puzzle due to the abundance of false leads, some motivated by ill intent and others stemming from genuine concern. Furthermore, Maria's physical description was rather commonplace. A young woman of slender build, average height, with dark hair and eyes. These particulars aligned with the characteristics of countless individuals, resulting in a deluge of incoming calls that ultimately led the investigation astray, as these leads failed to yield any substantive progress. One of the most perplexing aspects that impeded the search was the uncertainty surrounding Maria's intended destination. She underwent 3 transfers across different provinces, introducing an additional layer of complexity. A multitude of lineups, extensive interrogations, consultations, and inspections were conducted, all to no avail. Additionally, 2 extensive search operations were carried out in the region and along Route 34 in an endeavor to eliminate the possibility that she had ventured into the wilderness to spend the night or, alternatively, had fallen victim to a crime along the highway. Speculation even arose that she might have boarded another bus and journeyed to a different region of the country. As the months elapsed, the hypothesis of human trafficking began to wane. Maria's age did not conform to the typical profile sought by human traffickers, who typically target adolescents or significantly younger women. Nevertheless, it was never entirely dismissed, with investigators pivoting their focus toward the potential occurrence of a psychotic episode. Remarkably, in the testimony provided, Maria was portrayed as being poorly dressed, disheveled, and seemingly adrift. She embarked on and disembarked from buses, engaged in hitchhiking, and had even misplaced her identification documents. Contradictorily, Juan Pablo, one of the last individuals to converse with her, recounted that during their telephone exchanges, she exhibited a sense of normalcy, offering no indication of being disconnected from reality or under the influence of substances. There was no discernible sense of fear or urgency in her voice, nor did it seem like she was evading anyone. He emphasized that their conversation flowed like any ordinary exchange between friends. However, he did acknowledge 2 aspects that struck him: her admission of having no money and her decision to head to Hui without confirming his presence there. He described Maria as an exceptional person, noting that he had never known her to grapple with substance dependencies. He expressed astonishment at her sudden visit to Hue because they had lost touch for a considerable period, and out of the blue, she called to inform him of her presence there. Simultaneously with the official investigation, Maria's family pursued their search independently. They frequently voiced their frustration with the sluggish pace of the police investigation and the lack of tangible progress. After her disappearance, they engaged in conversations with numerous truck drivers, shopkeepers, neighbors, and law enforcement officers. Across these cities, they disseminated flyers bearing her photograph and contact information for individuals who might possess pertinent information. It was reported that they gathered more than 4,000 leads, yet the overwhelming majority proved to be either false or malicious. Maria's friend, Juan Pablo, also conducted his own inquiries. They come through police stations, private clinics, public hospitals, and forensic facilities. The police conducted extensive searches and explored numerous theories, yet with time, most of these leads were discounted. Maria's friends even contemplated the possibility that she might have experienced a psychological episode during which she lost self-recognition, track of time, or fell victim to drugging followed by abduction. Nonetheless, these notions remained firmly within the realm of conjecture due to the absence of concrete evidence. Within this context, it is noteworthy that the relentless search conducted by the Cash family did not go unrewarded. While it did not yield Maria's whereabouts, it did lead to the discovery of other women who had fallen prey to criminal organizations engaged in human trafficking. These women had been ensnared in various locations and were ultimately rescued, thanks to the Cash family's endeavors in sharing their stories with the authorities. Amidst this unyielding pursuit, tragedy befell the family once more. In 2014, during one of their numerous journeys across the country in pursuit of any trace or lead, Maria's father tragically lost his life in a traffic accident in La Pampa. He had ventured there to distribute flyers bearing his daughter's visage. Several weeks following his passing, his wife received a phone call that rekindled her determination, faith, and optimism to continue the fight. Pope Francis extended his condolences for her husband's demise, expressing his heartfelt sorrow. In response, she wrote a letter of gratitude, wherein she conveyed how the Holy Father's compassionate words had filled her heart with love and rekindled the faith and hope that had dwindled from her life nearly 3 years earlier, alongside the disappearance of her daughter. Following Maria's father's tragic passing, his children persisted in their quest to locate Maria. Yet, as is often the case in disappearance investigations, they appeared trapped in a labyrinth, devoid of new leads to guide them. Then, in 2018, a significant development emerged when human remains, including a skull, were discovered in the Bolivian city of Oruro. There was hope that these remains might provide answers about the fate of the young designer, and this possibility garnered extensive media coverage. However, Subsequent DNA analysis conclusively ruled out any connection to Maria. The Salta judiciary confirmed that the DNA extracted from the recovered remains did not match that of the Cash family, whose samples had been collected in Salta. Consequently, the mystery surrounding Maria's disappearance persisted, much like it did at the outset of the investigation. In that same year, 2018, a woman named Julia came forward, alleging physical abuse and cruel treatment and implicating her ex-husband, a prison guard, in Maria's disappearance. She claimed to have witnessed Maria alive and held captive within a human trafficking network, at least until 2013, 2 years after her initial disappearance. Julia's attorney stated that, according to his client's testimony, these women were confined in a piece of land with rented infrastructure. While this lead was diligently pursued, it too failed to yield the discovery of Maria. The subsequent year, in September 2019, as part of this renewed investigative approach, search operations were conducted in an area known as Las Palomitas in Salta, based on information provided by an anonymous witness. Regrettably, these searches produced no results that could advance the investigation. In November 2020, forensic experts released an updated image of Maria Cash, employing age progression techniques. The intention behind this effort was to assist in her potential identification and to prompt new leads. Maria's family expressed hope that this initiative would yield fruitful results. However, once more, these endeavors proved unfruitful. In a succinct recapitulation of the case's progression in 2023, certain Argentine media outlets revisited the topic of Maria's disappearance. They underscored that during the early years of the search, numerous leads were pursued and a plethora of hypotheses were formulated. However, as time passed, these trails gradually dissipated and the prospects of locating her dwindled. Nonetheless, the authorities remained steadfast in asserting that the search had never been abandoned.